I'm John Seam with Kerry Kautzer and Robert Ingram. We're here at Road America Racetrack, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, for the 2017 WeatherTech International Challenge Vintage Races. This is the weekend of July 21st to 23rd, 2017. The featured mark this year is the Chevrolet Camaro, celebrating its 50th anniversary. Several years after its 1967 introduction, the Chevrolet Camaro became competitive in the over 2-liter category in 1969, with Mark Donohue taking top honors in the SCCA Trans Am Series. Sports 2000 closed-wheel racers are celebrating their 40th anniversary. S2000 series was started by John Webb at Brands Hatch Circuit in England in 1976. U.S. Lola importer Carl Haas brought Sports 2000s to Midwest SCCA racers in 1978, and the competitive class continues today. The Historic Can-Am series is presented by Victory Lane Magazine and sanctioned by the Historic Can-Am Association. The Can-Am features unlimited racing cars from the 1970s. These cars are always fan favorites, being loud and fast. Other race groups this weekend are Historic and Vintage Production, Masters Grand Prix and F1, Vintage Sports Racing, Big Bore Production, Formula 5000, Monoposto, and Indy GTP LMP cars. Special events also include the Race Car Concours on Friday evening and the Sports Car Concours on Saturday evening at Seepkins Resort in downtown Elkhart Lake. I'm with Jim Hanna, and we're with a group of the S2000 cars that are one of the featured marks here.
I started racing pretty late in life when I was 40 in 2000 and raced production cars for a few years, and then took a few years off and was talked into getting involved with Sports 2000s in the year 2010. So this would be my 7th season running these cars. Here celebrating the 40th anniversary of these cars, which Lola in England built the first Sports 2000 in 1977. They were very, very successful for many, many years, both in Europe and in North America. All these cars now are running in various vintage series. We've got some of the original Lolas here that are 40 years old. Yeah, and they're still running strong. The earlier cars, March, which was an English manufacturer, Taiga, Lola. The newer cars, in fact, most of the cars here, all the cars here under our tent are Swifts, which were actually made in the USA, made in California. And they came out in this model came out in 1985, and they were very successful right out of the box. They did very well against the British cars and won a number of championships, and they're a very good car. They're very rugged, and they're very tunable and very adjustable, and they're a lot of fun. All of these cars use a 2-liter Ford, which was originally used in the Pinto in North America, and the 4-cylinder Capri in the early to mid 70s in Europe and here in North America. So all these cars have the same engine. We're limited to a stock engine, very few modifications permitted. The engine produces about 140 to 150 horsepower, and the cars all weigh about 1,100 pounds without driver added. So they're all very equal. It really, one of the challenging and fun things about it is it really comes down to your driving. One of the ways that you tune these cars for each different track is we're limited to a 4-speed transmission. So in fact, this young man with the red car and the other fellow with the green car are getting ready to change some gears because they found this morning that they didn't have just quite the right gear for just quite the right section of the track. And if you have the correct gearing at a place like this, top speed of these cars is about 140 miles an hour. This is a phenomenal place. Everyone's been so friendly. From the time we entered the state of Wisconsin, everybody's just could not have been nicer, and this is a phenomenal racetrack. We've all just been out for the first time this morning for our first practice session.
with Bruce Marquand and Brian Blaine. Can-Am was a very competitive series that was run in the 60s and in the 70s. Bruce is a driver of the McLaren Can-Am, and Brian Blaine drives the number 75.
I actually started vintage racing back in about '83 in a Lola Can-Am car. But the Can-Am series to me has been the pinnacle of racing. It's the last of the unlimited series. The only rules were you had to have 2 stoplights, 2 doors, and 4 tires. And other than that, you could do anything you wanted with these cars, and they did. The cars experimented with some of the first aerodynamics using wings, downforce, ground effects, things of that sort, and some really innovative cars came out of that series. So when the opportunity came for me to buy an old beat-up, wrecked Can-Am car and fix it up and go race the cars that my heroes raced, I couldn't miss out on the opportunity. I'm racing a 1969 Lola T163. Lola is a British car, as was the McLaren. The Lola and McLarens were kind of competitors all through the Can-Am series. The Lola that I'm racing has a big block Chevy engine with 510 cubic inches and probably somewhere around 800 horsepower. The car is capable of doing in excess of 200 miles an hour. Has what's called a high wing, and the high wing on this was designed to pick up the air that's blowing over the top of the car and push it down directly onto the wheels so that you got maximum traction in the back of the car.
Now, Bruce, you're a driver of the McLaren that's here.
The car was built in 1967 by McLaren. They built 3 cars, the M6A chassis, and this particular chassis was not used in the 67 series. So in 68, McLaren sold it to Roger Penske. Roger Penske had Mark Donohue drive it in the 68 Can-Am series. So I believe it took second in the series. You really got to respect the car and the track, because these are, they can do 200 miles an hour, and they still were built in 1967. So, you got to understand that they are older cars, and don't try to drive them like they're a current Indy car. I say that because my business is restoring these and building them. To be driving these cars and having the opportunity by my customer to drive these cars is almost like a once in a lifetime chance.
We were here last year with the Can-Am car, and again this year, and usually we have an anniversary every 5 years of the Can-Am series. Last year we had the 50th anniversary, and this year is actually the 50th anniversary of the first Can-Am race here at Road America. This is by far the best Can-Am track in the world. This is one of the few tracks where these cars you can just give them their rein and let them go.
I'm with Jim Bradley and Dick Lind, and Camaro is one of the featured marks this weekend with its anniversary, and we wanted to make sure that we talked to a couple people that had Camaro Trans Ams from the series. So Jim, let's start with you and tell us about your car.
Well, my car is a 67 Camaro Z28. It was originally owned by Bob Kiefer. It was originally made into a race car and it's been a race car ever since. Ran in the Trans Am in the 70 and 71 years. In fact, it ran up here in 1971. I have the timesheets from the car from that era. We all tried to run everything that's back to period. So the motor is a 302 cubic inch motor. The line of history of the car, it raced in Trans Am and then it got put away. I bought the car in 1994. Have raced it since 94. Great car, run with Dick, and we've had a wonderful time running these cars. They're very special.
The Trans Am was a great series, and it really was. It ushered in the muscle car and everything else. And like Jim's, mine is a real Trans Am history car. Also, it was run by what they call a privateer, and his name was Bill Veek. And its first race was actually in Lime Rock in 1972, and it's very cool to go to the SCCA logbooks and history and online and find your car sitting there where these people had raced it. And as Jim was saying, we run here in what's called Group 6, but we run Trans Am in Group 6, which means we have to run like they ran back then. And as he was saying, we have a 302 cubic inch engine, which puts out a lot more horsepower than they did back in 1972. And steel heads and naturally aspirated, same Delco type brakes. I mean, it's amazing what you can get out of these cars today. A gentleman named George Von Gall had it and in Alabama, and I saw it and bought it instantly. And as Jim's, this car went through various reincarnations. It was first a Trans Am, and then an A sedan, and then back to Trans Am, and then GT1. I've run it for almost, seems like 20 years already, and it's just a blast. It's a very competitive class. In fact, today there are 58 cars in our Group 6 race, and everyone from all over the country is here in this race. This is a big, big race.
To run on a 4-mile track and open these cars up and hear the noise and everything, it's just exhilarating. This is just absolutely a great facility, and we'd do anything to come up here to run.
I'm with Greg Mitchell, and he is all the way from Oregon, and he has a very unique car here, one of a kind. Can you give us some information on it?
Yes, it's a 1967 King Cobra Can-Am, the only Can-Am car that was built solely by Carroll Shelby for the Can-Am series. There were two cars built. One of the cars was destroyed, and this is the last surviving example. It's all aluminum. There is not a bit of fiberglass in it. It's really kind of old school because most cars at that time had all migrated to fiberglass, but much more convenient to work with. But it's an all aluminum car with a monocoque aluminum chassis in it and aluminum Ford V8 in it that was an experimental engine built by Ford for this car.
Where in the world did you find it?
Well, I found it at the Monterey auction about 7 years ago, and it was presented completely wrong. When I got the car, I decided I wanted to put it back to the period that it came out of 1967, and I spent over a year researching
the history of the car, found a wealth of photographs at the Ford Museum in Dearborn. A photographer that had been hired by Shelby had donated his whole photo collection to them, and I was able to come up with a treasure trove of photographs of the car that allowed me to get it restored back to its as close to possible as its original condition.
I'm with John Fergus, and he has Sports 2000 cars. John has been very successful in the Sports 2000, winning the SCCA runoff 7 times. John, what do you attribute your success?
Well, it's a great class, as you know, and I think it's attention to detail, as it is in most classes, that we spend a lot of time getting the car right, and I think personally, just with diet and exercise and whatnot, and focused. Our saying on our team is, we don't go racing, we go to win, and that's just how we get up in the morning, and it really matters, I think, in a competitive class.
Now, the car itself, now they all have the same Ford block engines and approximately the same horsepower performance. What differentiates one car from another?
Well, there are a lot of design differences, you're right. They not only have the same engine and must have the same engine, which is very restricted in terms of what you can do to it, but they all have to weigh the same minimum weight. There are minimum dimensions and maximum dimensions on the car, which is why they all look similar. The manufacturer is probably less important than the tuning that you do on it. At a track like Road America that is so fast, with such long straights, it's important to set up the car with as little downforce as you can tolerate. That said, you obviously still need to get through the corners, but for a car like this, which is a sports racer, it's ideal if you can get the car set up so that you can hold the throttle flat through the carousel, all the way around the carousel through the kink. And it's hard to get the car balanced enough with enough aerodynamic downforce off in the carousel to do that. But if you can do that, then you start building up speed from turn 8 all the way down to Canada Corner. And so too coming out of 14 here on the main straight. So
where do you start in the fine-tuning?
The aerodynamic devices are the tuning device for the highest speed corners, when you have a lot of airflow. In the lowest speed corners, then things like sway bars, tire pressure, shock settings. And some of those, of course, would hold true throughout all the corners. But sway bars, for example, typically have more to do with the slow-speed corners. I've been coming here for a long time. I started racing in 1980. I've had a chance to run and win here in a number of classes. I ran in IMSA, so I won races here with them, and not only in the club version of the Sports 2000, but there were several professional series that ran these cars. It was extraordinarily competitive and fun. And then my son actually also won a national championship in this car here at Road America, and so it's really special, something we could share the car together and racing together. Really glad you're doing this, promoting the sport and this wonderful facility here at Road America.
I'm with Mark Devis, and he is from Belgium, and he has a Lola T70.
I've been doing historic races for now almost 20 years. Time flies, primarily in Europe. But the last couple of years I always make sure to have a car and leave a car here in the States, to kind of do some other racing on tracks here in the States. I've done Road America, I've done Laguna Seca, probably done a couple others. VIR I did as well. Clearly Road America is my favorite so far. In the States it is, yes. The car is 1967 Lola T70 Mark IIIB Spider. So fairly rare car. Lola only built 4 of those cars. This particular car is obviously, as you can see from its livery, with, red with the white arrow. It's an ex-John Surtees car, Surtees team, which he raced in 67. Amongst others at Riverside, and also here at Road America in 67. So I bought the car probably about 5 years ago. Did a full restoration on it. Still has its original chassis. They replaced the front cross member, but I have that. I have the old original front cross member as well with it. So. No, and it's that's kind of the story, and we've just one of the rare things, we've just had to do an engine conversion from downdraft carburetors to side draft carburetors.
And the reason for that?
The reason for that is that in Europe they will not give me FIA papers for if the car is a period car and it's in a period livery, then it needs to be exactly as it raced in period, and in those days all of the Lola T70s actually raced with side draft carburetors.
What are your experiences here at Road America?
It's a great track. It's my favorite track. It's a good high-speed racetrack. The kink obviously adds a bit of spice to it. Not far after Concours Shows, which is my home track. So, no, it's lovely. Atmosphere is great. Typically good weather. So, fingers crossed.
Car was absolutely perfect. Ted and Chris and the boys, they put together a car that would make Colin proud.
Well, it was a solid race. I had Adam Rupp with me for the first lap. We were side by side for a lot of it, and I thought we were going to have an exciting last lap, but he decided to go into the landscaping business down at 12. So that's how we finished. But it was great races. They're great guys to race with, great cars, the best track in the country.
Present the awards is Alice in Dairyland.
Tank, Marlin Premack, across the stripe, almost to Concours. Through about 5:30 today. It's been a wonderful 4 days.
Ready.
Market 13-6.
In what's basically an older Lola 330 from 1972.
We're at the Jerry Hansen, and in the spirit of Jerry, I was trying to make sure I did well.
I had 5 miserable years working for a Porsche dealer. I won't tell you who. But my first day there, the president of the company had a meeting, 10 people, and they said, I want you all to stand up. We had a terrible month last month, so we're going to sing after me. We had a terrible month last month, but next month we'll try harder. So they all stood up and sang except me, and he says, Brian, on your feet. I said, I'm not standing up, I wasn't here last month.
It was a drag race, but we were supposed to race from the corner up, but it didn't happen that way. So he wanted me to win, I wanted him to win. So I think this is the first time both of these cars have actually finished the race together. So that's celebrating in itself.
So Brian, how many years you've been coming now and winning?
I would say we've been coming about 15, 16 years.
Randy, well done in that amazing Pescarolo.
Thank you. It's kind of a special moment because my mom's here, she's 87, and I got my 5 granddaughters here, and my kids.